Why does self-management matter? Why does this inner work really matter? And I want to shout out, give a shout out for the PMO Competency Framework. Any of you familiar with it? Yeah. It was developed a couple of years ago, community effort. Many of you may have given input to it. Did anyone give input to it? So this book, this framework, contains many different aspects of effective PMO, and one of them is the behaviors. And that's the one, I think, where this session is most relevant. There are 16 behaviors, if I remember correctly. I've just listed 6 of them here on the slide. And I think we can all agree that if you exhibit these behaviors, and let's just look at the ones on the slide right now, you will be the most effective version of you. You will be able to manage your day-to-day, manage relationships much more effectively. Okay, be open to challenge. I know there are many challenges on a daily basis. Things change. If we could be open to challenge all the time, instead of being wedded to a single solution, wouldn't that be great? Be resilient, maintain a positive attitude. Wow, that in some situations that can be a bit challenging too. Be open and honest. Take time to build relationships, credibility, and trust. When we are stressed, when we are under pressure, it's more challenging to take time to build relationships of trust. Work with compassion and passion. Maintain a growth mindset. You see, a lot of these behaviors are actually about mindset because your emotions and your actions stem from your level of thinking. That's what's so interesting. Can we become aware of our thoughts and why we behave the way we do, why we feel the way we do? Remain objective is the other one I've listed here. Be tenacious, act assertively as appropriate. Some situations you need to be assertive, not aggressive, but assertive. Maybe there's a small voice in your head holding yourself back. So that's why this is important. That's why the inner work is important, because we want you to exhibit these behaviors. And perhaps as a starting point, I would like all of you to reflect on how much of your time would you say you exhibit these behaviors at work. I mean, private life is also relevant, but that's another conversation. Just looking at work, is it 50% of the time that you are exhibiting these behaviors, open and honest, and work with passion and compassion? Is it 80% of the time? I don't know. It probably depends from day to day. 100% of the time is not possible, and that's not the goal. Because we all get triggered, and I'll get more into what I mean by triggered, but we all have situations where we're not open to challenge, where we're not resilient, we don't have a positive attitude. We don't build those relationships of trust because perhaps we feel mistrust towards somebody. So the point of this conversation is not for you to always be this. The sun isn't always shining. The point is for you to recognize when you are not there, to not be an autopilot, because when you're on autopilot, you don't even notice that you're not open to challenge because you feel justified in your points of views. So the whole idea is for all of us to become more aware and to notice when something changes so that you can do something differently, to become open, to maintain a positive attitude, etc. Okay, so that's kind of why this is important. In that light, I would like to introduce this concept of being either above the line or below the line. Because what I'm talking about is perhaps simple in concept, but it's not always that easy to implement. So above the line, below the line can perhaps help us to make something a bit vague, a little more concrete. Whenever you are above the line, you are effectively exhibiting the behaviors I just talked about. It means that you're open to challenge. You have the right mindset. What can you do with that mindset? Well, you can innovate, you can create, you can collaborate, you can lead. All of the good things we want. What happens below the line? Anyone wants to guess? What words might you find below the line? Isolation. Stagnating silence. So whenever we go below the line, and that might happen several times in a conversation, certainly several times in a day, it's because something is stressing us out. It could be just a moment. You come back to your desk and you realize you have 100 emails you need to respond to. Just that, it's a stress response. You might quickly get back up, above the line, that's fine. But essentially, it is some kind of tension, some kind of contraction. You're not open and expansive, you're somehow contracted. Below the line could mean many, many different things. It could mean many different types of emotions. And I think there are degrees of being below the line. If you are just a little bit below the line, you might feel frustrated, you might be annoyed, and you might go for a walk, and you're fine again. Good. If you are really below the line, you might be really angry, or you might be really, really worried about something for a long time, or you might lack confidence in a certain aspect for years. So being above or below the line is situational. It depends on the situation you're in. It depends on the person who's in front of you. Sometimes it doesn't even require another person. Just the thought alone can bring you below the line. And I would like to ask you to think about the last time you were below the line. And just have a think about, is this something that happens a lot? I think it happens a lot. We're just not really aware. All these small annoyances or big annoyances we can probably remember more clearly. And do you notice when it happens? Because most of us are on autopilot most of the time. And when we're in autopilot, we don't notice. Oh, it's fine, we're used to these annoyances, and sometimes we don't even express it. We don't address it. So the whole idea here is to become aware of it, because if you are on autopilot and you are angry, or you're holding a grudge against a certain stakeholder, or you don't like a certain person, fair enough, but it will impact your relationship, of course, we know that. If you're aware of it, you can do something about it. So, would anyone like to share? How often do you think you're below the line? Are you aware of it? Do you notice the signs? Somebody's nodding. What signs are there for you when you're below the line? I'm looking at a random person who nodded, but...
You just think, oh, not this again.
Oh, not this again.
Sorry.
What is not this again? What does that mean for you?
I guess just sort of like stress.
Right. Stress.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why this is important. And I want to also relate it to what's happening in our brain. The brain is very complex. Some of you may have heard this before, but it's worth, I think, a reminder. We have three basic, if we are to divide this complex thing into three separate areas. We have the frontal lobe, the neocortex, and that's actually where you want to be most of the time. That's what's illustrated in yellow here. The frontal cortex, or the neocortex, is associated with being above the line. That's where you want to be when you want to create, you want to collaborate, you want to innovate, because that's where the best thinking is. You have no disturbance. You're just like open and ready to listen and ready to collaborate. And best case, because we also have degrees, I think, of being above the line, but best case, you're just enjoying what you're doing, and you're full of energy, and you are open to new ideas. Then we have the middle part of the brain, that's the blue part here, and that's the limbic system. And whenever you have a strong emotion, like oh, stress again, or something, some kind of contraction, whatever that looks like for you. Could be fear-based, could be anger-based. Anger's an easier emotion to use because we all understand what anger is. Most of us understand what anger is. Then that will fire up. That's a part of your brain that will fire up, this little amygdala. And the last part of the brain stem here in red, that's your very automatic part of your body. So it controls your breathing and your heartbeat. And in stress, we know what happens. Your breathing gets faster, your heart beats faster. So all in all, when you're below the line, it's those last two parts that are being activated, your middle part of the brain and the brain stem. It does its own thing unless you take control of it. That's what we're here to notice. When does the blue and red parts of your brain take over? You don't want to be a victim of it. You want to recognize it, acknowledge it, and then do something to bring yourself back online. But the first step is recognizing. So if you can all think about, how do you notice How do you notice when you go below the line? It might be different ways of noticing depending on the situation, but that's step number one. You need to notice. You need to not be on autopilot.